All right, welcome everybody to another edition of the Nevada Trappers Association quarterly podcast. Um, it is, what is it, January 19th, something like that? Um,
19.
19th, yeah. Big day coming tomorrow or the next day, whatever it might be. There's also big things still in the trapping world, especially as it relates to Nevada. And it does occur to me too, something we didn't talk about before is we might want to touch on is the Utah lawsuit that was put down in the Supreme Court. Anyways, with me today is Neil Cheeney, the president of the Nevada Trappers Association. He's a repetitive guest, usual friend, usual suspect around this place. And then, of course, Joel Blakeslee. Joel, if I screw up your title or your role, please feel free to correct me. But I believe, besides just being a legend in Nevada when it comes to trapping, you are the legislative powerhouse behind the Nevada Trappers Association, as well as some of the other organizations, wildlife organizations in Nevada. But knowing that I probably did not do a great job of introductions, did did you want to say anything more regarding who you are and what you do for trappers in Nevada?
Yeah, sure. I was president of the association for 36 years, and right now I'm the policy director. I told the guys that politics is what I'm interested in, and I'd be happy to continue on in that role. But the other things that a president does, somebody else should do, and I'm 70 years old, so it's time that younger people like you guys got involved, and I can
Totally
kind of
agree. Um,
share what my
you are a little bit quiet, so if you could project a little bit more, that would be good.
Oh, okay. So anyway, I was president for 36 years, and now I'm the policy director. How's that coming across? Okay.
Good.
Okay. And I'm on the board of directors for the Coalition for Nevada's Wildlife. I'm a lobbyist for the Southern Nevada Coalition for Wildlife, and I belong to most of the uh, a lot of the main groups, around sportsmen's organizations in the state. So I've been
Outstanding.
lobbying for like 48 years. I mean, the first time I ever went to the legislature was in 1977. And I was just a young man then, didn't know what I was doing. And I've evolved over the years to where I kind of know what I'm doing now. So,
So I'm curious. How did you go that direction? I mean, was it just a passion for politics and wildlife put together that kind of made being a lobbyist make sense to you, or did you get pushed down that road by somebody else?
well, I I was crazy about trapping when I was in my 20s. I mean, and even before that. And I didn't want to lose it. In fact, this same guy that's bringing this petition forward came over to White Pine County to one of the Wildlife Commission meetings. And I went to that, and it got me fired up, I, I just wasn't going to lay down and let somebody take it away from me before I had a chance to experience it. And I went on and became a professional trapper for many years. I had about 15 years where I spent over 300 days in the field between working as a range rider for the Forest Service and trapping professionally. So I'd spend my summers on the mountain, my winters on the desert. And then I eventually, the time clock told me I had to come over and find a wife and raise a family. So I came to Reno, and there I was close enough to Carson City that I ended up meeting other sportsmen and whatnot. And the thing that kicked me off was one night the Humane Society was cutting up a fur coat for pledges. and the mayor at the time was up there. So I just called up and asked for him. I said, hey, the sportsmen are pretty upset with this. And he says, well, I'm just in it for the dogs and the cats. And I said, well, that's not what's happening right now. And he got up and left. So that worked. And then Mike Mizell was the president at the time. And we had a young man from Elko, or Ely. No, he's from Ely. And he was the vice president. Well, he resigned, so they asked me if I would take the vice president position, and I said, okay. And so then Mike resigned, and I became the president 2 seconds later. So that's how that worked. And so pushing 40 years later, here we are. But,
Absolutely. I'm curious. You said you were, what a unique opportunity to legitimately say you were a professional trapper. I mean, outside of those who maybe work for the state as state trappers, do you think there's any quote unquote professional trappers out there anymore?
Well, they're professionals during the season. Absolutely.
True.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to take away from what they do, but
yeah. Is there anybody that makes their entire living for a year trapping? I'm not aware of anybody, but I know of people that make a significant portion of their income. I did it for years. What I did in the summer just got me through the summer. My main income came from harvesting furs.
okay.
So, it's.
I appreciate that.
I mean, I know, like you take Bill Ilchek over in Baker, Nevada. That's all he did for years. I mean, he doesn't live a high lifestyle, but that's what he did for a living. So yeah, there are guys that I would consider professionals.
Okay, fair enough. And I would love to say at some point before I die, I would love to trapping for me is really I hate to call it a hobby because that trivializes it, but it really is. It's just such a small portion of it. I don't earn an income by any means off of it. I don't even pay for gas hardly, to be quite honest. So I do it because I enjoy it. So I guess hobby is probably the right term. But I would love 1 year in my life to legitimately no shit spend every day of the winter trapping. Period.
Well, I'll tell you how I used to do it. I used to lay off in September with the Forest Service, and I'd go set up some long trap lines. I'd set up like 3 long coyote trap lines, and I'd run them hard for a week, and then I'd switch to another one for a week, and then I'd switch to another one for a week, and I would catch hundreds of coyotes. And then along about Thanksgiving, when the ground would freeze, our bobcat seasons in those days were usually from the 1st of December until the middle to the end of February. Around Thanksgiving, I'd pull all my coyote traps and I'd go out and set long lines for bobcats. And I'd run them all winter for 60 days. And when bobcat season got over, I would draw permits for the Ruby Marshes for muskrats. And down there, they had 5 units, and 3 of them they permitted 1,000, and 2 of them they permitted 1,500. So I would spend a month down there in the marshes. And in the years that I didn't draw a federal refuge permit, I'd go up into the northern part of the state and work beavers. And then there were always the years when I'd go to other states. I've been in, let's see, California, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Alaska, Idaho, Wyoming, And I've been so close to the Oregon border and the Arizona border that I might as well have been there. So I've traveled to different states, and there were longer seasons. Like California used to have a season before ours. So I'd go over there, then I'd come here, and then I'd go down to Colorado later after our season was up. So that was a way a man could make a living at it if he worked hard and traveled and did multiple species. So
it occurs to me that Neil, you and I kind of agreed that doing this podcast on a quarterly basis was probably the best kind of balance between just honestly finding time to get things done. But I probably, I think there's room here, and I think Joel would be the perfect person to start with to do and I'm just going to be honest, a legends conversation with Nevada trappers. There's many trappers in Nevada who fit that category. In those intervening months where between like January and April, we can sneak in an extra episode because, Joel, you and I could talk for quite honestly for hours. I do another podcast personally on my own where I have conversations with people that I've worked with or I know of, just based upon the sole purpose of getting to know them better as people, getting to know their life story, and you honestly, you fit that category just as much as you fit the trapping category. So I need to think about that a little bit, but I think it makes sense. Neil, you obviously don't need any introduction. You've been on here before, but you want to give a quick 5-minute elevator speech on who you are and what you do?
Well, I basically ended up as the president about how Joel did. I just started calling around, asking when the rendezvous is going to be and offering to help set up stuff. And then pretty soon, that was about the time Joel was ready to step into the policy director and let somebody else take over. And they appointed a guy from Elko, Lance Stitzel, who was awesome, by the way. But they called me and wanted me to be the vice president, and I told them I promised they wouldn't get a lack of effort, but results was something I couldn't guarantee. And Lance had it for about a year, maybe a little more than a year, and he started a business. And things just took off and got crazy on him, and he felt he didn't have the free time to give the president's position what it deserved to do a good job, and so he decided it was best for him and the association if he stepped down, and I guess by default I ended up president after only being around for a year or two involved in things. So it's nice to have Joel still around in the capacity he is. I can lean on him and ask him advice and history of things. He can pull history out of his butt from 50 years ago and give you plenty of examples on to back up decisions and why things make sense. And he's an awesome teacher, awesome guy to have on our side. So I'm just thankful that Joel's here helping guide me the way. I call him right now the puppet master till I get a few more things figured out. But we truly, I don't think very many Nevadans understand how lucky we are to have Joel. He is probably one of the best, if not the best lobbyist, for like trapping association wise across the nation. We've had some meetings with the National Trappers Association the last few years, and these readiness summits. I think we might have talked about them on our first podcast, what they are, but Joel's gone to Louisiana, Texas. I'll probably miss a couple, but they've sent him all over the country to give talks to the Trappers Association leadership. He's definitely the guy.
Do you do lobbying strictly for Nevada's interest, or do you also do for the for the National Association as well, Joel?
Not for the National Association. I'm actually, Jenny and I are going to probably start lobbying on the wild horse issue professionally. So that's coming up.
Okay.
But that'll be a federal deal. Well, it'll be a state deal because Nevada has
Yep.
we're the epicenter of that problem. So
Absolutely.
we'll see where
Okay.
if we get funding for it.
Yep. All right. So there's really two or there's 2, 3, maybe 4 things we want to talk about today. I'm going to save the most important for last, so that way people hang around. To be quite honest, and we lost Neil for a moment. I think he's there, but he may have stepped away. But anyways, so the first thing I wanted to hit real quick, because I just want to get your thoughts on it, is so Utah just lost their bid to the Supreme Court in an effort to regain control over public lands. And give me an opportunity to articulate myself well here, and hopefully I do. I honestly, on a personal level, struggle with this one because I believe strongly that Utah had a very strong constitutional argument against the idea of federal government holding land in perpetuity, in a way that was never envisioned by our founding fathers. Saying that, however, I also have a grasp on reality, and I understand that their purpose in regaining control of federal land had nothing to do with maintaining public land. It had everything to do with being able to commercialize and the economic value of that land. And one of the things that really honestly makes the West such an incredible place is the vast areas of public land that provide an opportunity for people to get out there. And if not done correctly, and states got control of it, they would sell it off, and we would be Pennsylvania, we'd be West Virginia, we'd be Kentucky, we'd be whatever. We would no longer be the West. So I struggle with it because from a constitutional perspective, and I'm a huge constitutional guy, I see value, but I'm actually, I feel like a traitor to my own heart, but I feel good that they didn't win because I think they would have ended up selling off the vast majority of that public land for something that and if we lost it, I mean, I might as well move to Texas for all it fucking matters at that point, to be quite honest. What's your thoughts on the lawsuit? And I'll start with Neil first.
Honestly, I am about like you, honestly. Maybe more so happy that it was declined. I'd rather have the land, even if it was hung up like they've got it for no specific use. I mean, yeah, I don't have a lot to say on it. I'm just maybe very similar to you, Daryl, but even more happy that it turned out how it is.
Yeah, I think if the citizens of a state could start the movement in a way that said, hey, we're going to do this, but the intent is that that land will be held in perpetuity for the citizens of that state, maybe then I could get behind it. But I think in the end, it's a sacrifice of constitutional rights or constitutional principles that I'm willing to make, maybe. And sacrifice of constitutional principles is never a good starting point, but it works out in this case. Joel, what are your thoughts?
Well, if you want my thoughts, we should do a whole nother podcast on it because real estate's my business, and I've seen this go on. This was just historically there was a movement back in the 70s, I believe, called the Sagebrush Rebellion.
Sagebrush Rebellion, right?
Sagebrush Rebellion, and there were, it was largely agricultural driven. Some of the state senators and assemblymen spearheaded it. It got shot down. It didn't really go anywhere, and there's been talk about it ever since. That's kind of the history of it, and of course Utah just tried it on this too. I moved to Nevada because of public lands. I wanted the freedom to be able to go where I wanted when I wanted. But, and here again, I'm going to try and make this short because there's a lot to talk about on this.
Oh, yeah.
For instance, wilderness areas. Is that really public land anymore? You know, I've had that argument with a lot of wilderness advocates. I said, I don't care who puts up the no trespassing sign. It's still a no trespassing sign. And they say, well, you can go there. Well, can I? Really? I'm 70 years old. You expect me to walk 10 miles in to check a trap? You know,
there's significant limitations associated with that relegated to a niche portion of the population.
And what? Yeah, exactly. It's a real estate grab, is what it is. When you go to real estate school, they teach you that real estate is a bundle of rights, and you know you can take those rights away. It's like anything. You can, when we get into the trapping thing later, we're going to talk about how the donate now people are going to try and regulate this thing a little bit at a time and reduce that basket of rights. But when it comes to public land, as a Trappers Association, we should make it abundantly clear that that's not what we're advocating, because the other sportsmen in this state wouldn't have it, because the sportsmen in the state are all for public lands. That's, I mean, not everybody, obviously, but we need to,
by and large,
we need to stay involved with the sportsman community on this. And with that said, the problem with wild horses is the socialistic ownership of land, and that's what public lands are. If you look at it, we've got 50 landlords, and the reason we've got a wild horse problem is because somebody in Delaware owns the land just as much as somebody in Texas or Rhode Island or Florida or Nebraska or anything else. So you've got a property manager called the BLM and the Forest Service, and they're beholding to Congress, which is composed of 50 states and 500 and some representatives, either senators or congressmen. And politically, why would somebody in Connecticut stick their neck out for wild horses? You know, it's an emotional, you know, Black Beauty and Flicka and all that stuff. They're not going to risk their political capital for, you know, what they consider wasteland in Nevada. So the politics of this are basically what we have regarding wild horses is a tenement owned by a whole bunch of landlords, and they haven't allowed the property manager to manage it correctly. So we have leaky pipes and an infestation of animals in the property. So, and that's.
I'm still here if you can hear me.
Yeah. Are you still there? I just can't see you.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm trying to figure out what's going on with my cam.
But anyway, I'll leave it about on the public lands. That's something. I don't think the Trappers Association should get involved in that too deeply, but there's nothing wrong with saying what we think about it. I just did. So
no, absolutely.
I'm all for public lands. I just want good public land management. So
agreed. Okay, fair enough. And you know, it occurs to me I suspect your answer, or if we really got into a good conversation about this, that your thoughts are far more complicated than I would have thought in the first place. So we may have to put something down on the books to really have a good long conversation on this.
It's deep. It's deep.
Yeah.
I'll just say that.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. Let's get off of it. Anyway.
That's okay. I don't know what in the world is. I've never had this problem with my camera before. So while I'm sitting there tinkering around with this sucker, figure out what's going on here. I guess the elephant in the room for this recording really though it has to do with actually you know what, let's touch on uh, the coyote calling contest real quick. That's not the big elephant, but uh, either which one of you want to take the coyote calling contest and kind of give a synopsis and where we're at on that at this point?
Go ahead, Neil. I've been talking a lot.
Well, you'll just have to come in and correct me after I'm done. uh, so basically, we'll do a short recap. Last March, I think it was at the beginning of March, at the Wildlife Commission, there was a petition brought up by the Humane Society to ban killing contests.
Humane Society
And
of the States.
Humane Society of the United States, to ban coyote killing contests is what they called them. Long story short, they thought they weren't going to get their votes, and after being advised to pull their petition, they did before it went to a vote. And then you have the newly formed Predator Callers Association in Nevada and the coalition that got in talks with them, with one of the commissioners offline, and worked on a couple of regulations that they thought might be able to, I guess in their words, protect calling contests. It kind of looks like they were coming forward with a compromise, but that is not what it was. And the commission decided to have they formed a subcommittee and decided to have 3 committee meetings, one in Vegas. The first one was in Vegas, second one in Reno, and the third one was in Elko. All said and done, the third one in Elko just happened this last Tuesday, the 14th. And there was a motion by the committee to recommend to the commission to go forward with a season in which to hold the contest, which looks like, I can't remember what the start was, September 1, Joel, to the end of March, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's
And then any participant in a contest has to hold a Nevada hunting or trapping license in order to participate. And that does not set either of those in stone. It still has to go through the commission and their scrutiny and their talking points on what they want and whether or not they even want those. And they can either make a motion to go forward with rulemaking and regulation making on specific regulations, or to can it all together at this next meeting. Correct, Joel?
Yeah. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
The history of that is we've heard this in the legislature twice and at the Wildlife Commission 3 times already, and it's been shot down every time. Several other states have made them illegal, and I'm proud of Nevada that we don't follow other states. We tend to lead. We've got a real strong political organization in Nevada. I'm extremely proud of that. And a lot of it is people show up. And that's one of the reasons for this podcast, is to make it available out there to people like you that are listening to this right now, to know where to go and what to say. I mean, you can say whatever you want, but if you listen to the podcast, you'll hear the main points and the history, and you can make your own ideas. I think what's going to happen is they're either going to just throw it in the trash, or they might do the license and season thing. And the license and season thing is only for contests. It's not for anybody that just wants to go hunt. So it addresses some things like non-residents and state sanctioning, and there's a law that says you can't shut a season down without data and whatnot. So there are some advantages to a couple of those things. My personal opinion, either way, I'm not going to fall on my sword either way. So, but they're not going to get their ban, and the other side, which I want to make it clear, it's the Humane Society of the United States, not the state humane society or county humane societies or city humane societies in Nevada. The national organization, is primarily they're. I used to call people antis, and now I call them the Donate Now people, because the first thing you see on their websites is Donate Now. So I suspect that some of their motivation, if not all of it, is fundraising. So anyway, that's it on the coyote contest. I don't think we're going to suffer any big losses there. And it was hard fought. And some of their people just quit showing up. They didn't have the perseverance for it anyway. So anyway, I'll just stop on that. But
No, that's a good. I think that captures the basic framework of what's going on, and I think you're right. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I would like you to clarify one thing for me, though, and quite honestly, it's probably good that you can't see me because it's really focused on you two. Although I would like to know my freaking camera don't work. But anyways, I've heard this a couple times, and I forget the details. There's something that's been said many times that if something is introduced and is shot down, that it can't be reintroduced for 5 years, and that's why this keeps coming up as a regulation. Can you expand on that a little bit? Because I don't quite understand it, and I would like to.
Okay, that's the Wildlife Commission has a series of policies, and policy 4, I could read it to you. Well, I don't know that I have it on my computer just handy, but basically it's not a law. It's a policy that the Wildlife Commission has that basically said that unless there's new information provided in a 5-year period, that the commission's likely to not hear the same information again because of redundancy. So what happened, and this is important for the trapping thing that comes up next, to understand what happened with the coyote calling, is they submitted a petition. At that point, the commission can either vote to hear the petition or not to hear the petition. The commissioner that is a proponent for the Donate Now people advised them, at some criticism to him from various sources, advised them to pull their petition because of policy 4. Said, if you leave your petition up and it gets voted down, you're not going to be able to bring it back for 5 years, which is technically not true because you can bring different things back. But that's the spirit of policy 4. So they went ahead and had these committee hearings basically to give them a voice, and so they can say that they got heard. And, there's some legitimacy to that, but it was overdone in my opinion. I mean, it probably cost NDOW and the Wildlife Commission $10,000 to have that, maybe $20,000 to have that meeting in Elko. I mean, there's overtime, there's hotel rooms, there's per diem, there's, they had like 15 people there. And that, the sportsmen fund NDOW like 96% of their budget. So basically the sportsmen are paying to have a fundraiser for the Donate Now people. And that's a concern that I have. But anyway, to answer your question short, it's policy 4. And That's on the commission website. You can look it up. I had it here, but I'm not seeing it in my toolbar above here, or I just read it to you. But it's not a law. It's just a policy.
So that's interesting. Because so basically, if they manage to if they manage to have this wow.
There you are.
I tried this on my phone.
It's working.
Give me one second.
Sound like you're in outer
You probably
space.
just have to turn the mic off on your computer.
Ryan. All right, so that's better. Is that better?
No.
No. Man, Mike.
Great echo. You'll be able to edit this later, I think. So.
Yeah, if I could figure out how to edit it.
Maybe it's the volume you got to turn off on your computer.
That's a good idea. All right, how's that sound?
Say again?
Better? I know what it is. Never mind. Now that I've made everybody dizzy.
There you go.
All right, so let me set this stupid thing here. All right, so that's interesting because if they lose this time, then that means we don't have to hear from them for another 5 years, at least on this topic.
Well, yes and no. I mean, the way the petition's worded, it's about mountain lions and trapping, and they could just bring it up and say it's about bobcats and trapping next time. I mean, it's, but still, if the commission, some of the commissioners are going to be there in 5 years, and they'll remember this, and of course, hopefully, we'll be there to remind them about it. So it gives them the political cover to deny a future petition. So the policy's not written strongly enough to say we can't do it. They could do it, So it's like a patent. Yeah. All you got to do is change one little thing, and you got,
to the coyote calling part of it. But all right, so that's coyote calling. We talked about the Utah thing. We talked about the coyote calling thing. I'm going to wrap up the very end with just kind of how the season went. But in the middle here is the elephant in the room, which is really why we're here today, which is, you know what? I think I might do this from my phone from now on because this is really simple and really easy. So, and I'll lead, and Joel, and then you can insert sanity where I've gone off the rails. There's a specific individual or a group of individuals who have introduced a petition to the Wildlife Commission to change the trap check times from 96 hours to 24 hours, as well as some other limitations, because they quite honestly, in my words, they're appealing to the emotions of the public in being disingenuous in how they present the impact that trapping has to mountain lions. What they're trying to say is that trappers every year incidentally kill a large number of mountain lions as a result of trapping. Now, I know those numbers to be that there are 20 mountain lions caught on average each year, 17 of which are released unharmed. 2 of them show some signs of traps, of having been trapped, and 1 actual death on average per year. Now, the way they present it is it's a freaking mountain lion genocide, but which is complete bullshit. And I cannot wait for the fur the biologists for NDOW to get up there and completely decimate this insanely ignorant assertion that these folks are making. And what pisses me off, quite honestly, about it is it has nothing to do with fucking mountain lions. It has to do with the fact they don't like trapping. Period. And it really, really irritates me. I hate this bullshit that they use to try to get around, rather than just presenting the issue of trapping to the public and educating the public in a sincere, genuine way, and then allowing them to make a decision. They're using emotions and bullshit to try to get around it. Now, Joel, if you can smooth that out a little bit for me, for the public.
Well, yeah. I got a question for you guys.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my camera. Does it appear that I'm talking to the people on the screen? Am I?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, if I look here, does it look like I'm looking down?
Well, to be fair, you're a little busy, so it's kind of it's in somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, because my eye wants to go to look at the picture, but when I have to look up at the camera, it's like I don't see anything but a little dot. But I'll try and look up there, so I'm talking to the camera.
Look at me.
Okay. Anyway, this is just another. Well, let me go back and give you the history. They want to outlaw trapping. I mean, let's just start with that. Yep. This is about mountain lions. It's not about 24-hour trap checks. It's not about anything other than getting rid of us. It's cultural bigotry. I mean, they do not want us to live the lifestyle that we want to live, period. That's what this is about.
Agreed.
They want to mind our business for us and have us. I've had a lot of them over the years tell me that. They, why don't you do something else? And I say, because I don't want to do anything else. This is what I want to do. So leave me alone, Yeah. So I fight them. And frankly, I think part of the reasons that I've been so successful at it is because I have a deeper conviction than they do. There are different archetypes in the Donate Now button people. There are the professionals that have the Donate Now buttons. This is about money for them, and they win either way. If they win, they say, "Look, we won. Send more money, and we'll take something else on." And if they lose, they say, "Well, hell, if we'd have just had more money, we'd have won. Send more money, and we'll do it again." So that's one archetype. You need to understand who you're dealing with. You have other people that need a club to join, groupies. And I mean, we all have that need, I suppose. I mean, we all belong to a club, but they're not nearly as deep as the ones that are actually firmly committed to environmental stuff. They believe in clean water and air and wildlife and
Microphones too close together.
But those people that are sincere about it, they're fairly easy to hear reason and logic and come around. And then there's the people that just simply, well, we can say swear words. They're just assholes. This gives them a platform to be like that.
Thanks for breaking the water, Joel. I was worried about that a little bit.
So anyway, those are the different motivations that we have. But what this is, I tell a lot of legislators and commissioners and stuff, I said, I've known you for 50 years. You just had a different name. Because the same stuff has come up since, what, you're 30 years old, Neil?
Yep, today.
Just turned 30.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yep, thank you.
Well, I've been doing this 18 years before you were born. How old are you? Or you, Daryl?
49. So you've been doing it basically my entire life.
Your entire life. I started doing this when you were born. So, it's the same thing that they want to do away with our culture. That's what this boils down to. Let's just put that on the table. All the rest of it is noise and camouflage, and this current petition is exactly that. They're using the mountain lion as the platform.
I want to pause for one moment. I really apologize for interrupting you, Joel, but I believe it was you that coined the term cultural bigotry, and it's a perfect fit. If there are so many examples of other groups of individuals who participate in activities that are specific to their culture, their history. I mean, the perfect example is the Native Americans and whaling. And nobody has a fucking problem with allowing them to do what they do. But because of it's a furry little creature that Disney made a cartoon out of, they have a problem with it. And I'm a firm believer if we can get people to grasp it's part of our culture. It's what we've been doing for. I do it because my dad did it, and to be quite honest, if my dad didn't do it, I probably wouldn't even know it existed, and I wouldn't do it. But I did it because it's a family tradition. So I apologize. I just wanted to hit that real quick because whoever coined that term is a freaking genius in my mind.
Well, I'll tell you where I got it from. Was Rich Sandoz. He's lives in Spring Creek, Nevada, and he penned a letter to the Wildlife Commission probably 30 some years ago, and he made that point, and I glommed onto it just like you are.
That's
I thought
good.
This is perfect. This is perfect because that's exactly what it is. We all understand it for what it is, but that actually articulates the concept. It's bigotry. There's three kinds of bigotry that I'm aware of. There's religious bigotry, there's racial bigotry, and there's cultural bigotry. I know exactly how people with persecuted religions and racial stuff feel. As a trapper, I've felt every one of those things, even from some people that we would think would be our allies from time to time. But that's what it is. So that's what we're fighting. And one thing we need to understand too is that some of these people don't really want to beat us. I mean, we're the goose that lays the golden egg. We're the one that gives them the platform to launch their fundraising activities.
That's an interesting point. That's an interesting point.
If they had as much money as everybody keeps telling me and all that stuff, why didn't they take us out 50 years ago? I don't hardly ever see them win anything. But
so, and I apologize if I missed this in my fumbling around over here, but specifically in the state of Nevada, the trap check times, which means the time it takes a trapper the time that is required for a trapper to check his or her traps is 96 hours. And that, to me, is the sweet spot because of the distance and space and time that we have to travel on our line. We're not Pennsylvania where you have a 200-acre plot that you can check after work every day. For example, my typical line that I run on average is probably 50 to 60 miles with 20 to 30 traps. And it takes me, I specifically designed it as about a 4-hour trip. And I could not do that on a daily basis. If they were to adopt a 24-hour trap check, I'd have to give up. I just couldn't do it. So they want to change it to 24. What's the other aspects of that petition besides changing the time?
Well, I'll read them to you, and then let's talk about the time because that's what it's all about. The rest of this is just it's just camouflage. If you throw enough stuff up, maybe you can get the one you really want. So I'll just read them to you, and we can. Why don't I read them to you, and then we can discuss them individually on how much we think it has value to discuss. Obviously, the first one's shorten the interval to 24 hours. They talk about the best management practices by the Fish and Wildlife Agencies and the National Trappers Association. They did all these tests, and they did it on a 24-hour trap check interval. The important point on that is that they didn't test any other intervals. So that's the important point there. The other one, number 2, is to establish proper trap sizes. They got a retired government trapper to, I don't know if they put him on the payroll or what. They've done that before with other government trappers. And he said that a number 2 coil spring is the acceptable bobcat trapping trap, which, they work just fine. But they want to put a limit of 7 inches on the jaw spread. Well, that's a ploy because the usually the minimum jaw spread on the beaver traps that we use is 7.5 inches. So they'd take out all the beaver traps, and all, of course, on the body gripping traps, they're at least 10 by 10. So that would take out the body gripping traps. So they're using that as a smokescreen to take out about a third to 40% of the traps that we use. It's like saying, go ahead.
Just for my education and for anybody who's listening, what they're saying is when that trap is open, it's at least 7 inches from jaw to jaw.
Yeah, that's the maximum.
Do I understand that correct?
Yeah, that's the maximum.
Okay.
But
maximum. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It doesn't say anything about foot traps, so that would take out all of our conibear traps that we use for trapping beaver. That would take out all of the larger traps that we use in the water for beaver because they have those huge hind feet that we have to use. So the analogy that I use on that one, it's like when years ago they tried to outlaw magazine capacities in handguns. They said you can only have a 5-round magazine. Well, knowing full well that most of them have at least 7. If you don't look below the surface and you let something like this go through, the unintended consequences are quite huge. So anyway, on to the next one. It says require swivels on all traps, and the chain has to be attached to the center base plates. Well, we all believe in swivels. We don't need to be told that. And I'm not aware of a foothold trap that's sold that doesn't have a swivel on it. I mean,
and what's really interesting to me about this, and which goes back to the comment you made about that government trapper, is these are strangely specific. Mm-hmm. Like, if I'm thinking of your typical Humane Society guy who's worried about animals and just loves animals, I don't know that they would understand what a fucking swivel is in the first place or the purpose of it. But these are really, really specific.
Well, if you think about it, look at this again, and the same thing applies to your conibear traps and your box traps. And I mean, am I going to put a swivel on a box trap?
Right.
This would make box traps illegal. It'd make conibear traps illegal. They don't come with swivels. I mean,
the unintended consequences of idiotic legislation or regulation.
Yeah. The way you word something can, must and may are big words in legislation. And I could go into a story about that, but I won't tonight. But it might be a good one for another podcast. But when you say must in a regulation or a statute, that means you got to do it.
Yep.
If you say may, that means it's optional.
So I'm going to ask you a question, and I believe, to be quite honest, I know the answer, but I just want to get it out there in the open. Do you think that sometimes regulations or legislations can be written poorly, and they have unintended consequences of impacting other areas that nobody, honestly, just didn't see it coming because they're not knowledgeable about it? Or do you think these were worded specifically because it would capture these other areas that have nothing to do with a bobcat or a mountain lion.
Well, there's no way to know that without being in the head of the person that did it, but
Fair enough.
Knowing the way they are, I would suspect that this is written this way to play gotcha, you know. But the thing is, I know way more about it than they do, and so do you, and so does Neil. But this is something that a lot of trappers might not even think about.
True. You know? No, absolutely. I to be quite honest, that's why I really asked the question about the jaw, the distance and the jaw thing, because I don't know. I've had traps that I inherited from my dad, or I got from the great Tim Treese before he passed, and I never really thought about it, but they are what they are, and so I didn't even really understand that detail. So
listen to the first sentence on number 3. It says require swivels on all traps.
All traps.
It does not say foothold traps. It does not say body traps. It does not say cage traps. It does not say snares. It does not say mouse traps. I mean, if you wrote it the way they have it written here, you'd have to have a swivel on your mouse traps.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So words matter.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when you're talking about regulations or legislation. They matter very specifically. I mean, we argue about a fucking comma in the Second Amendment. For how long?
Yeah.
Much less a word.
Yeah. So this is an important discussion that we look at things with, the absolute worst case scenario. Okay, number 4, ban the use of drags. It says that the main purpose of a drag is cosmetic, according to their consultant.
Cosmetic.
Allow the animal to drag itself out of view of the public or another trapper. That's not why I use drags. I mean, sometimes it is, but that's not the primary reason I use drags. They've made a statement here that's just simply not true.
Right.
It says drags allow an animal such as a lion or a bear to climb a tree and hang suspended on the other side of the branch from a drag, causing extended suffering, injury, and death. Well, so does a trap that's chained at the base of a tree, if you want to go that far. I mean,
true.
Some things happen. You can't prevent it all. But outlaw drags, I mean, it's ridiculous. There's
that's
a lot of...
I had picked up on that aspect of the petition in general conversation, and I didn't understand. I guess I just didn't even understand what they were trying to do. So that's fascinating. That was part of it.
Well, and as we go down further, they're going to talk about chain links and stuff, which contradicts drags anyway. Drags are easier on the animal in a lot of ways. If a lot of your drags get caught in a shrub or a springy branch or something, and it actually acts as a shock absorber to the animal. So to act like drags are some demonic thing is like it's 180 degrees from that. But it's another thing for them to throw out there, because this word compromise always comes up. Both sides have to lose something. Well, what do they lose?
But I was going to say, in the context of these conversations, when it comes to compromise, it's never. I don't get anything out of them.
No, and I want to get into that later in this podcast if we have time. So anyway, let's go from the drags to ban multiple sets. They say that setting 2 or more traps near each other, sometimes within inches, increases the chances of a victim to be caught by more than one appendage. That's not the reason you set 2 traps close to each other. Does it happen occasionally? But so what? I mean, he's caught one way or the other.
Yeah.
Not only does this practice lack any consideration for fair chase or perhaps fair capture. Okay, so what's fair chase and what's fair capture? And does that really, how much of that applies to trapping? What is fair chase? I mean, we're tool users. That's the definition of Homo sapiens. We have opposable thumbs. All we have is our brain and our opposable thumbs. Other than that, we're naked in the wilderness. We have to use tools. You know what?
And to me, Joel, there is no other sport or outdoor sport that is more fair chase than trapping, because if you think about it, we have to convince a wild animal that could go anywhere it wants in the world, it is unrestrained by anything, to put its foot in an area that is 7 inches diameter or 8 inch diameter, wherever that trap is at. I don't know how you could get any more fair chase than that. How you got to try to figure out how to put your trap where a wild animal is going to put its foot.
It's a hell of a lot more fair than a 22-250 at 500 yards.
With a 7x35 scope and a turret, you know. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
it's where does that begin and where does it end? You know.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, fair chase is bullshit. It says it can lead to de facto baited traps. And it says, given the frequency of non-target rabbit captures by Nevada trappers, multiple sets probably account for most incidental capture of hawks, owls, and eagles.
Probably.
I mean, I suppose that's an argument that can be made, but I've used possibly over the last 50 years, I've made tens of thousands of sets. Tens of thousands. I've seen one eagle in a trap in 50 years.
I've caught one raven.
I don't recall ever catching an owl or a hawk.
Yep.
You know, I mean, and the amount of trap nights that I personally have experienced, you know, it's probably in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of trap nights that I've never done that. So, yep. I mean, I can speak from extensive experience. This is bullshit. So, number 6, require above ground traps to be securely anchored by a chain no longer than 30 inches. Smaller chains in combination with smaller traps will increase the chances of larger non-target animals such as mountain lion, bear, domestic livestock pull free. So, you know, the idea that a smaller trap is going to decrease lion captures is a fallacy for one reason. I've seen more lions pull out of traps in the bigger traps because you take a number 4 Montgomery, for instance. There's way more flex in the jaws than there is in a number 2 Montgomery. You know, it's leverage. I mean, you've got a 6-inch jaw spread versus a 5-inch jaw spread or something. Well, you got another inch there to flex. And unless you beef up the bottom of the traps with base plates and strengthen the jaws with laminations and bubble the tips and everything else, it's fairly easy for, I mean, if you wanted lions to do catch and release on lions, you'd set big traps with no modifications. You know,
true. It gives them the ability to flex and twist and pull and
just break
release
the trap.
themselves.
Yeah, you take a number 3 double long spring. I've had a lot of times where they just pull the jaws right out and away they go. You know, and those are the bigger.
The other thing about at least the trap chain length that frustrates me is the purpose of a longer, in my mind, at least in what I've been taught, is the purpose of having a longer chain is it increases the likelihood that as that animal is making its way away from wherever it stepped and got caught, that chain and then associated drag is going to get wrapped around something. But if you shorten that up, the likelihood is that thing, that whatever it is that stepped in there, is going to keep on running for miles, and you're never going to find them.
Well, you're talking about drags. We're talking about stakes right now.
Okay, fair enough.
We're talking about securely anchored by a chain no longer than 30 inches.
Yeah, so, I did kind of conflate topics. I went back a little bit, but yeah.
Right. So, you know, what they're saying is that if it's anchored solid, that when an animal hits the end of the chain, his chances of pulling out are greater than, say, if it's on a drag where there's some springiness and some shock absorption. we're talking minimal differences here. I mean, I don't even know how to argue this because there's really not an argument there. It's just like,
Right.
if anybody I've tried short chains, I've tried long chains, I've tried drags, I've used stakes, I've, earth anchors, cabled off, on and on and on and on. I mean, they're fishing for something to say here. They hired this guy, and I'm not going to say his name on the air, but they hired this guy, so he had to come up with something. That's what this is all about. They said
They're all pretty much throwaways.
Yeah, they're throwaways, and he earned his money. I assume that they paid him to do this. I don't know that, but if they did, even if they didn't, he has to look like he knows what he's talking about. So he came up with this garbage. Require trapper education for new licensees, and remedial education is necessary for those licensees to be found lacking in basic awareness of proper trapping techniques. According to the 2015 survey by WAFWA, the most Nevada trappers have not had trapper education course, nor are most acquainted with best management practices. They're making assumptions there.
So this is an interesting one to me because in my mind, it becomes hard to argue against because it's like you're arguing against something that's so obviously good that if you do, you're an asshole. It's like I listened to a podcast today about social justice and the positive and negative aspects of that, and basically it's very difficult to argue against social justice because then what you're telling me, you're an asshole who doesn't want social justice. Well, no, so I'm very curious your thoughts on this one specifically, because this is the one that I think most people at the surface level would go, well, yeah, obviously you want trappers to be educated.
Well, let me get into this, and I'm happy to be able to say this. The word require. Who says we don't have trapper education? What did you guys do in Illinois last summer?
We educated a whole bunch of youth on mostly trapping and other kinds of sporting, duck hunting, shooting, archery, all kinds. We did it all. Ethics, gun safety, everything.
What did you do at the wild sheep thing last summer or the summer before?
Same thing.
Yeah.
Jed and Leo and those guys.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They put on.
We've done it 2 summers in a row now there in Carson City.
Well,
and what do we do at every trapper rendezvous? We have demonstrations and educational opportunities.
At the first house.
And the association we're expanding on that. We're got plans to make it out into different areas and do the same thing in more places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So who says that we don't do trapper education? We do.
Mm-hmm.
We've got it on YouTube. You can get all the education you ever want on YouTube.
The only way that you could, the way I see this going is, okay, well, you have to prove to me that you've been educated, which means you have to show me something that you paid for that demonstrates that you've been educated, which means it's a money-making operation.
Educated by the government is what it boils down to.
Bingo.
Mm-hmm.
And let me touch on that. This has been talked about ad nauseum for forever. Who's going to do it? I mean, are you going to do it through the hunter safety program? We've discussed doing that, but the hunter safety instructors, most of them aren't qualified to talk about trapping. So it's got to come from within our ranks. And we tried doing this once, and maybe shame on us. I don't know. I mean, we do it independently, but we tried having some stuff at hunter safety things, but every county has those things. Can we find a person in every county or one person in the state that's willing to travel to every county and spend that much time at it? Or is it more efficiently done at our rendezvous and at our ILLIPA meetings and stuff like that? It gets done, but to require it to be done on a state regimen and timeline and so on and so forth, well, I've always said, if somebody wants to do that and they can make it happen, knock yourself out. But does it need to be a requirement? I think it should be required just on our own, but we're doing it. Just because they
Well, and I don't know.
Just because the state isn't doing a course in it doesn't mean it's not getting done.
Well, and I don't. I see this on the the Facebook forums all the time. I don't know. I've never run across a trapper out in the desert who I've had a conversation with, which was, "Hey, how'd you get into trapping?" "Oh, I don't know. I just went down to Shields, picked up some traps, and I'm dropping them in the ground." Everyone I've run across has learned from their dad. They've learned from their uncle. They've learned from somebody, a mentor of some sort, or they jumped on the Facebook forum and said, "Hey, I'd like to learn about trapping. Who's willing to help me?" I mean, maybe there's one idiot spending gas money out there with a trap that has absolutely no idea what he's doing. But I'll buy him a steak dinner if he'll volunteer that.
Yeah, guys like that are one and done. They go out one weekend and then
they're done because they don't catch anything.
Yeah, exactly. It requires a lot of investment in time and equipment and to learn how. You pretty much got to learn from somebody.
Absolutely.
You
it's really a mentor mentee. It's a shame. A lot of the skills that we have as a society these days, and I hate to go off on a weird tangent here, but if you bear with me, I think it'll be fruitful. A lot of the things that we have in society nowadays are something that you can learn via a book or a YouTube video or whatever, and then go off and you can go do, and you can kind of figure out. Trapping to me is very much a scholar student. It's very much a master apprentice type skill. You have to find somebody who knows what they're doing, who's willing to give you the time and effort to teach you.
Yeah. It always brings me back to earth because, I mean, I've been doing this for 60 some odd years and things to me that are so obvious. When I meet somebody that it's not that obvious, I have to go, I remember when that was a difficult concept for me. Or if you did one little thing a little different, it would make a big difference. But you don't know that until you've actually experienced a lot of those things. And
so, I think it's interesting because you and I went out about a month ago and had an opportunity to put out a half dozen sets or something. And I felt like, at least from my perspective, and I've been on and off doing this for 40 years. Many years there in the middle I didn't because of military service, but I consider myself relatively decent at it, although I suck at apparently results. But anyways, I felt like when you and I were out there were a couple things where I was like, okay, that's completely different. That's unique. I've never seen that before. But for the most part, I felt validated that at least what I was doing was in the ballpark.
Sure.
But I'm curious from your perspective, did you was there any point where you're like, holy shit, this guy's retarded? Or that's some stuff I've never seen anybody do before. I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, when he went with me last winter.
Well, I'll tell you what, I watch a lot of these guys on Facebook. Everybody's filming their trap lines, walk up to the brush or the dirt and whatnot. And I look at their sets and I think, man, that's not the way I'd do it. But then they've got a cat laying there. So
then they catch.
I always tell, I do demonstrations and I'll get off on a little bit of a rabbit trail. But I always talk about the time I was down on the Walker River and I went hiking up this draw, a big sagebrush draw, and I saw this trap in the trail and it wasn't covered up. And I thought, who in the hell's that rookie? And I walked on by and went up to my sets, which were all covered properly and under the rock where they're supposed to be, and so on and so forth. And next time up, he had a cat in his trap. I thought, I'll be damned, that guy caught a cat. I can't believe it. I went up, of course, I caught a cat too, and I thought, well, yeah, I'm the pro, he's the rookie, you know. Well, I ran into him later on that winter. It was a guy that routinely caught between 100 and 200 cats a year. And the next year I went out and I saw a similar thing, you know. And I was only good for like 50, but I saw the same kind of a setup in northern Washoe. It was a little different, but it wasn't covered up. It was right there in plain sight. It was blocked up really good. And I thought, man, who's this rookie? Well, I ran into him later, and he was a 100 cat man. And at some point, it dawned on me that who was really the rookie here? You know, I was trapping cats with coyote methods, where you have to really cover things up, camouflage them really well, and what it resulted in is you had frozen down traps and stuff like that. But I learned from some of the best inadvertently. But that answers your question. You know, who's right and who's wrong. I mean, the guy that's got one in the back of the truck is right.
True. You know, I'm always amazed. You know, and again, Facebook is a great opportunity. Facebook's Facebook, but to see people when somebody will always ask, "What's the right way to trap whatever?" And like when I learned from my dad, he was almost superstitious in how he approached trap preparation. You know, he would, when he got out of a vehicle, he'd put on a completely different set of boots. He would, you know, he did things very specifically. And I always thought, you know, it had to be that way. But then you come across these guys who are like, I don't even boil and wax my traps. I just pull them out of the box and I put them in the ground. And they catch. So kind of a tangent, but yeah, we all learn.
In that era of your dad, I was kind of in the tail end of that era, but every book you read said that. But most of the books you read were from guys in Pennsylvania that, you know, I think smells might make a bigger difference there where it's more humid and whatnot. I don't know. But yeah, I remember going out with rubber gloves and hip boots and all that stuff and setting cloths and so on and so forth. But, you know, that all works. But after you do it for a long time, you find out what's necessary and what isn't. You know, you get to a point of diminishing returns on what, you know, if you do everything perfect, there's that end of the spectrum, and there's the other end of the spectrum to where you do nothing perfect and it still works, you know. So
True. What else we have left on the petition?
Last one. Oh, just to finish up on the trapper education. That's been brought up so many times, it's not even funny. And how are you going to fund it? You know, who in the state is going to do it? You know, if you're going to require a government education. My personal belief is we can do this on our own, and we have been doing it on our own. Where's the problem here? Is this a solution looking for a problem? I mean, that came up at the coyote contest meeting the other day about carcass removal. You know, well, hell yeah. Everybody should dispose of their carcasses. They shouldn't throw them out in the middle of Main Street in Las Vegas. We all know that. I mean, for the thousands of animals that are caught every year, how many times does it become an issue?
Yeah.
The one issue that got brought up was 10 or 15 years ago. So do we need to make a regulation on one-time thing that happened 15 years ago? I mean,
yeah.
What's wrong here? Is there something we're trying to solve? I mean, it sounds good, but how necessary is it? It's
Yep.
necessary, but it's being done by us as private citizens. I don't. My personal thoughts are I don't think we need the government to do it. If they want to
Agreed.
do it, I wouldn't fight it, but I don't see where the problem is. So why are we searching for a solution? This is just one more thing to legitimize their petition. They're hoping that one of these things will cause this petition to go forward.
Well, and I would suggest too that they're hoping that that one more thing will be the straw that breaks the camel's back on it individually for each trapper to go, you know what? Fuck it. I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore because it's just too damn hard.
Yep. That's right. And, you got to remember that their big motivation is to create drama. This stuff is, I've said it many times. I told Truman that one time. I said, we have to restructure this narrative so this isn't entertainment. I said, there's a lot of people that enjoy this. It's like, let's get a bag of popcorn and a soda pop and go down and watch the Trappers play the Antis today. It's the Roman Coliseum. It's the Super Bowl. It's the NBA playoffs. It's the Olympics. Everybody enjoys a contest unless they're the ones that have to be in the contest.
And it would be nice if it was a fair fight. I mean,
well, yeah, it's not fair for them because they don't know what.
Well, I would argue it's not fair for us because we don't have the Humane Society and all these other organizations with the money behind them to do the public campaigns of bullshit that stirs up people's emotions for things that aren't even a problem in the first place.
Yeah, but let's do the last one, and then not to take over the moderation, but I think we should discuss the main one in the room, which is the visitation. I think that's important for people to understand why it is the way it is and why it should remain the same. The last one is what they do. Okay, it says improved collection of non-target trapping data to better monitor compliance of Nevada trappers with the regulations and to identify educational needs that would benefit licensees and the public's wildlife heritage. So that's their main platform. They're saying that we're not reporting accurately on non-target catches, and my say on that is,
how do you know?
Yeah, how do you know? You hit it on the head. Do you have data that confirms that, or are you just saying that because it advances your narrative? Sounds good.
And what I think has happened is they're interpreting the people that report that they didn't catch any non-target species as non-reports, like they think that 100% of trappers or 100% of people that set a trap will catch a non-target species, which simply isn't true either.
Well,
I think that's what they're trying to spin that harvest data and those reports that we put in that get published every year. They're trying to spin that to fit their narrative, I believe.
Sure it is. That's exactly what they're trying to do. I've said that to so many legislators over the year that that's one of the main things I talk about. They say, well, what about cruelty and all that stuff? And I said, well, I'm not going to tell you that it's a totally pleasant experience for an animal, but I am going to tell you that the other side is going to try and make it look as absolutely terrible as they can make it look.
Mm-hmm.
If it's as bad as they say it is, I wouldn't be doing it.
True.
They've made something up in their mind, but they have no experience with it. I have experience with it. Are there some things that aren't great? Well, yeah, but most of the time it's just fine, and which we should segue into the main thing, I suppose, so that people understand what we're talking about. But that's up to you, Daryl, if you want to get into that. side of it.
Well, I think what I'm about to say is what is the road you want to go down, but feel free to go that way if this isn't what you wanted to talk about, because I didn't get an opportunity to really expand on my thoughts too much when we first started out with the 96-hour trap check. I did talk about the fact that it just by making it 24 hours, you're making it is something that is just not possible for me to do as a part-time gig. But the other part about it is just that I don't, in all my years of trapping, I don't know. I could probably count on, and maybe this shows how crappy of a trapper I am, but I could probably count on two hands the amount of times I've caught something the first night in a trap. It's always been probably the second, third, or fourth day that something if I'm visiting that trap every single day, I am dramatically reducing the opportunity that I'm actually going to catch anything in that trap in the first freaking place because I'm at the trap every day.
Well, if you, I talked to a statistician that worked at UNR. He's dead now, but that's what he taught up there. And I asked him about statistical probabilities. And if you go on based on a 24-hour period, logic says that it's 16 times more likely that an animal will spend less than 24 hours or less than 72 hours or more. So,
can you restate that one more time for the slow kids on the bus?
Yeah, it's 16 times more likely that an animal will be in a trap for 24 hours or less than 72 hours or more. If you break that into 4 time periods. Because, yeah, I mean, just the mathematics of that,
That sounds counterintuitive to me. If I understood what you said correctly.
Let me put it this way. I'll make the statement right now. It's impossible for an animal to be in a trap for 96 hours if a guy's checking his traps on time. Because for that to happen, that animal would have to be sitting right next to you with his paw poised to stick it in the trap. And even if he got it in the first second, that's still 95 hours, 20 or 59 minutes and 59
and 30 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's impossible for what they say to happen. I mean, the animal, I've never had an animal sit there and say, okay, ready, set, go. I've never seen that. Have you guys?
No. And like I said, if out of 100 animals, I would say that honestly, my gut tells me that maybe 1 or 2 of them out of 100 will be there in the first 24 hours in my experience. The rest of them show up 2 or 3 days into it.
Well, that's probably right. I mean, if you want to break it down statistically into nocturnal and diurnal periods, see, that statistic I was talking about is based on four separate days. If you want to break it down night and day, and then you've got 2 times 4, you got 8. That actually increases the statistical odds that they'll spend less time in a trap. So the big point is, the law does not say you have to wait 96 hours.
Yeah.
Does it? It doesn't say that.
No, absolutely. If you want to check it every 24 hours, go for it. If you want to check it every 8 hours,
it gives you a framework. It gives you a framework, and the legislature I've got it in my presentation, actually told NDOW that we could have 96 hours. It can't be any longer than 96 hours. And they asked him to consider reducing the trap check near populated areas. And so
which is true in Clark and Washoe, correct?
Yeah, it's done by Game Management Unit. But the argument that's the biggest thing against a 24-hour trap check, and I've said this to legislators many times. I said, look out that window right there. You want every trapper in this county right there where you can see them marching up the same trail. If you want us to get out into the outback, like you always tell us, then we have to have time to do that. I said, otherwise you're going to concentrate everybody right here next to town. You're going to overharvest the animals right there. You're going to increase the conflict with the urban interface. You know, people seeing stuff and dogs and all that stuff. You know, if you want us to really go out and distribute ourselves on the landscape, we have to have time to do it. And that's a legitimate argument. There
Absolutely.
are others. You know, do you want to catch every bobcat on Peavine Mountain and none of them in Via? Is that good wildlife management? Hell no, it's not. You know, that's
So
like saying
those are some really good aspects of the conversation that I had not really. I don't know. I guess I intuitively kind of got it, but I hadn't thought about a way to express it.
well, it's like saying, okay, the only place you can hunt deer is on Mount Grafton. Maybe that's not a good example. Say White Rock Peak or what? Just pick
Yeah.
a mountain. Any mountain, doesn't matter. Let's just say
Yep.
everybody can hunt deer, but you can only hunt deer on that mountain. Is that good wildlife management?
Right.
Hell no, it's not. You know, you want to get distribution. That's why we have game management, where we have management units so that we can distribute the pressure into different areas and have a good result. 24 hours,
And
you know, as far as I can get is in my backyard, basically.
yeah, and let's not forget that it comes down to this. In my mind, I mean, the basic thing is it is a solution that is chasing a non-existent problem because the fact is there are on average 20 cougars caught by trappers incidentally every year in the state of Nevada. Out of thousands and thousands of trap hours, 17 of those are released unharmed. 2 of those are released with some indication that they've been caught in a trap, and one freaking cougar a year on average dies in a trap. One. In a state that is overrun with cougars, that has decimated our wildlife, our deer population.
And Daryl, that leads into a point that I wanted to make tonight too. Is
Yeah.
if you look at Endow's trap data that they have,
Mhm.
I have done the work. I called and put in a public information request. They sent me the data, the spreadsheets where they keep track of everything. You have to trap just those 20 lions a year on average. The percentage statistically to catch one in Nevada, if you set a trap, is 0.0004% chance of catching a lion in Nevada in a trap. I went and looked up the draw odds. The hardest tag in the state to draw is a 22 late tag. I can't remember what they give out, like maybe six tags for Area 22, which stretches from Hyco all the way to Ely. The draw odds of that hunt is 0.02% chance of drawing that tag. So I don't even I'm not a mathematician. I don't know how many times better you have chance of drawing a 22 late tag than you do trapping a mountain lion in the state.
Well, let
But
me just ask you, Neil, because I personally have never trapped a cougar in a trap, incidentally or on purpose, period. Now, I'm not the longest running trapper or the best, but I never have. Have you?
I have one, yes.
One? Okay.
About 10 years ago.
10 years ago, you got one. Joel, you've been doing this for 60 years.
Yes. Yes.
How many cougars have you incidentally caught?
Yes. A few.
A few. But in 60 years, you've caught a few, and by few, I'm assuming probably less than 10, incidentally.
A few, Daryl.
Fair enough. The point being is, it's just a non-existent freaking problem, and what the public needs to understand is has nothing to do. And I'm getting to the point where we probably should wrap up, but this is a solution chasing a non-existent problem, and the worst part about it is it has nothing to do with the problem. It has to do with the other thing, which is they don't like trapping.
Yeah, this isn't about lions. That's the platform they're using.
Yep.
The 24-hour trap check it's like saying, okay, we're going to allow you to have a goose season, but all you can use is birdshot out of a 22 short. Well, yeah, technically, yeah, you got a goose season, but can you get it? You know, it's like saying that you can hunt elk, but you can only use a 22 short. Well, you know, probably a guy or two could get that done, but is it really? It's a de facto ban on trapping in Nevada is what it is. And there's a bunch of reasons why anything shorter than that just doesn't work. One of them,
absolutely,
it's almost impossible to go a whole season without having something get in your way. I mean, if the school calls you up and tells you your daughter broke her leg and you're scheduled to check your traps that day, what are you going to do? You're going to go make sure your daughter gets in the hospital, correct? Sure you are. I missed my grandmother's funeral because I had some long lines out. And if I had that to do over again, I would have gone to the funeral. I've regretted that my entire life. But I was trapping for a living, and I thought it was my responsibility to do that. But it makes the point. There are things where when you trap in Elko County, I remember the winter 83 and 84. We had a 2-week period where it never got above 25 below zero. That ground fog rolled in.
Smoke.
You know, we had winds. I mean, it was dangerous. You know, I've trapped in Alaska, and when it gets to 30 below zero, those guys stay home. You know, they know it's dangerous to go out in that kind of a temperature. You can get those kind of temperatures in northern Nevada. You know, there are times when you're putting a man in danger if you require him to go out every day. You know, if you have a remote camp out there, I mean, you've got to come in for gas and groceries every so often. You know, what if you get stuck in the snow? What if you get stuck in the mud? I mean, there's a million reasons why you may not be able to make it on that time frame. It's so restrictive. And the big thing is, it's once again, it's a framework. You know, I go check my beaver traps twice a day sometimes. You know, coyotes, I check them sooner because I want to get animals out so I can get more animals in. You know, it totally depends on your business plan and what you're doing and when you're doing it and how you're doing it. And it's a framework, and it's worked well for a long time. The argument about all the other states that have 24-hour trap checks, well, most of those are 100% private land. Those guys are trapping behind locked gates. So really, it's up to them and the landowner what's going on the private property. You know, so you know, I'm not going to say they break the law, but I think it's possible that happens from time to time. But
you'd be naive to believe otherwise.
Yeah, they're going to have funerals. They're going to have kids that get injured. They're going to have, you know, something that comes up. They're going to get stuck in the mud. All the things I just mentioned. You know, and the important thing that I want to say, maybe in closing, because we could talk about this forever, is this has been hashed and rehashed and hashed over again and rehashed again. I've been through this 17 times in the legislature, and we meet every other year. So that's 45, 48 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And I've submitted a deal to the Wildlife Commission outlining most of the Senate bills and Assembly bills to prove that. We've been through this a million times in the Wildlife Commission, just like this. Same people. I mean, I've been fighting these same people for damn near 50 years now. It's been to court twice, in 1985 and 2014. And the court case was dismissed in 2019. So every time we get some new people, they trot it out there again, hoping that, there'll be a new guy that says, "Oh my God, we got an emergency here. We got to deal with this," and they don't realize that it's been hashed so many times.
I suspect, and in closing from my end, I would say this: when I grow up someday, I hope that if things work out the way that I want them to, and maybe this is a bold statement of me, but I would love for things to work out in such a way that I carry on the work that you do currently. And in 20 years, I bet you if I did that we would be having the same conversation about somebody else's petition 25 or 30 years from now. And I'll be talking on some podcast with Neil at that point and somebody else who's running it, probably having these same conversations, truthfully. But like I said, one of these days when I grow up, I honestly would like to be in a position to carry on the work that you do, Joel, and I'd like to learn from you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you both today. I don't want to monopolize all your time, and I appreciate your thoughts and your wisdom and your experience. In closing, Joel, is there anything and I apologize, I think I cut you off a little bit there, but is there anything that you'd like to close with yourself?
I'd echo the statements that you just made, and I think these readiness summits that we're working on are an incredibly important tool where we share strategies with other people in other states and other leaders that are willing to step up and spend their time and stand for what they believe in. So
I agree. We have to become far more organized because they are very organized in what they're doing. Period.
We're far more organized than they are in this
really?
state. Other states.
Oh, in this state. Okay, yeah, fair enough. I got you there. Okay. Neil?
Main thing I would like for everyone listening to this to either find a way to call into the Zoom meeting or get your butt in a chair in Reno at the commission meeting coming up this coming Friday the 24th is when our item is on the agenda. It's item 8. It's at 1001 East 9th Street, Reno, Nevada, 89512. The meeting starts at 8 a.m. and we are item 8, so I assume we will be up fairly early in the day, hopefully before lunch. Joe would probably be able to give a better estimate than I would. But yeah, hopefully.
I'm glad you got that out there because that would have really sucked to hit the stop on this button and not mention that detail.
Well, yes, that's the most important one. That's coming up immediately this coming Friday. Also be on the lookout. Give us a follow on our Facebook page. We'll give some updates. We have a busy year ahead of us. It looks like there will be another readiness summit held in Arizona. It looks like it's going to be somewhere around the end of April. The Nevada Trappers Association is hosting the National Trappers Association Western Convention June 6th and 7th in Spring Creek, just outside of Elko.
Heck yeah.
We are taking steps towards working on getting us a banquet going. There will be more info on that out. Mid-July sometime will be the Youth Expo in Illapah again. It's going to be even bigger and better than last year. End of July is the National Trappers Association convention, and it is going to be held in Virginia. And Barring a hard no from my wife, I'm going to try to make it out to that this year. And I think that email you sent me, Joel, was sometime in September. Nebraska is going to be hosting something similar to a readiness summit.
I don't recall Nebraska.
Okay, maybe it wasn't Nebraska. I'll scratch that and I will double check that. But it's going to be a busy year for us. It is a legislative year. I haven't heard of anything that's going to be coming at us. Maybe you have, Joel, but right now we're just trying to tackle the item at hand, which is this petition to the commission. So, number one thing, if you get anything out of this, is show up, get your butt in a seat, or get on the Zoom call Friday morning for the commission meeting.
So,
Yeah,
real
that's
quick, go ahead, Joel.
that's important. I mean, we'll carry the heavy load, but if the rest of you can help with, the light work, that's a big help.
Well, gents, in closing, I would thank you for the opportunity to talk to you tonight about this. It's incredibly important. Personally, Neil, I want to thank you because something we talked about earlier was cultural bigotry, and the work that you do to educate the youth in Nevada is incredibly important. Because if we're not educating the next generation, then we don't have a culture to talk about. We have a hobby that we do right now, and so what you're doing is incredibly important. And Joel, you and I need to talk because I really do think that, number one, I just like to talk to you in general, learn more about your life. Your life is fascinating. And I do think I really, this, my wife's going to kill me, but I like this idea of adding a podcast to talk about, the Nevada legends and trapping somewhere in the middle, maybe once a quarter for one more podcast. And then again, we can have another freaking podcast just on the legislative stuff. I mean, so we're definitely going to talk again soon. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I forgot to mention this before we started recording. I'm gonna hit the stop button, folks. That'll be it for the folks. But for you, Neil and Joel, if you could hang on 1 second. Anyways, I will get this up I'll get this up and published. Neil, I'll get it over to you as well, so we can publish this out to the website. It'll be on Spotify as well as YouTube, and then I'll of course do what I do and spread it around social media forums. And good stuff. Thank you again for your time, gentlemen. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought that went real well.